the load management is an issue in the NBA. Okay, the NBA has a load management problem. So we're going to go ahead and listen to JJ Reddick and Stephen A. Smith talk about how they can solve the load management problem. Now, I will answer before these two do that. I will explain this. I think the season is too long. I think the easiest way to handle this is to shorten the season. You shorten the NBA season, it makes each win or each game much more important, which would incentivize players to play much more. They wouldn't have to sit out, because if you shorten the season, you could also shorten, or you could make the schedule to where there's no back-to-backs, things like that. So you would eliminate the reasons players do sit out. I do think load management is a huge problem. It's an enormous problem for fans because of how expensive games are. It is incredibly expensive to go to an NBA game or an NFL game or an MLB game, and players and our families who are taking trips to these games to see certain players and those players not playing, it is brutal. You know, I have season tickets to the Pelicans. I go to all the Pelicans games, and I can't tell you how many times a team has come into town. The Warriors do it every time they play the Pelicans. The Warriors come in the day of, all of a sudden, boom. Steph's not playing, Draymond's not playing, Klay's not playing. The Bucks come to town, oops, Giannis isn't playing. The Nets come to town, oops, KD's not playing. You know, it happens all the time. So it is an issue, for sure. And you know, this happens with baseball. They don't want to see no-name pitchers pitch on their primetime games. The NBA doesn't want role players starting in their primetime games. It's hard to build rivalries. It's hard to make your regular season matter when the marquee players aren't playing. So my first course of action would be to shorten the season. Now, then you could say, well, the owners aren't going to do that, because if you take away 30 games from them, that's 30 games of revenue they're not getting. So it is a bit of a sticky situation. But if you're strictly trying to solve the player issue first, that's how I would do it.
I don't like the broad generalization of NBA players as a whole being comfortable missing games. But I know the sense of guilt I had when I had to sit out games for legitimate injuries. I know the sense of guilt my teammates had. We would talk about this. Okay. Let's not make that broad generalization.
But I'm not
players in general are comfortable.
But I'm not trying to make the broad generalization from a literal perspective. I started off the conversation by saying optically. If you're
optically, because that's one of the arguments, right? Like, the argument is like, why are players doing this? So optically, it does look like players just don't really care. Like, it looks like players are fine with it. They're taking a break. They don't want to do back-to-backs. They're totally fine with missing these games. JJ, being the former player, is saying that's not the case. You know, they feel guilty. They feel bad about it. They don't want to do it, but you got to do what you got to do. So, I get kind of both sides of this.
You're a fan. This is how it looks.
Yeah.
And so what happens is, when you have a player in the modern day age that's so mindful and cognizant of branding.
This is another good point. Players are so aware of everything now. Back in the day, that wasn't the case. Back in the day, players just played. They didn't think about it. They didn't think about, anything else. They were there to play. They played. If they were healthy, they played. That was it. Now players are thinking about, well, I'm going to save my legs for a playoff run. If I do this in the playoffs and this will happen, I'm not going to play against this team because I want to be fully healthy for this team. Even like physically, players know so much more about their bodies. Players track everything. I mean, not even players, but regular people can download sleep apps, track their sleep. They can know, like, oh man, I only got 6 hours of REM sleep. I'm not going to be fully functioning today. I need to make sure I rest after work, or I ate this, so I need to eat this to balance it out. People know. I mean, how many people do y'all know that do, cold dips? They do sauna, they stretch, they do yoga, they eat certain foods, they take certain supplements, they track their sleep. And what are they doing that for? To be an accountant, right? People are just in the know now. People just understand everything better, especially when you're a professional athlete who has the means and the resources and the people around you that are tracking those things for you. So the awareness of the player, the power of the player, certainly lends into why load management has become a thing.
How they are marketed, how they're perceived by the public, and they care about it on so many other levels, particularly as it pertains to business. Why is it that you seem oblivious to it when it comes to missing games, but you're sitting on the bench in street clothes, some of them, not most, not all, but some of them looking like male models, having a smile on your face when a paying customer came there to watch you play and found out after they got there that you couldn't play. They didn't know in advance. What I'm saying is optically, when those things are not paid enough attention to, that's where the turnoff comes.
Yeah, he's right too about that. The NBA specifically has become one of those things where, like, how many times have y'all seen a video of like Michael Jordan walking through the back of the arena and what he was wearing? How many times have y'all seen a video of like John Stockton in street clothes walking into the arena? But now, every single game, what the player arrived to the arena wearing. It's almost as important for a player of what they're wearing entering the arena as it is what they do in the game, as far as like the eyeballs on them, as far as like the marketing and all that stuff. Kyle Kuzma is more known for the clothes that he wears to the arena than he is for his numbers. That's just a fact. That certainly changed. The NBA is probably the most like social media aware sport. Their players and all that stuff. It's incredibly important. The look, the lifestyle, I guess. What Stephen A.'s right again. The players who are load managing, who are taking the night off, are going to sit on the sidelines and look like they're at the Met Gala. So it's hard for me to be like, man, this guy feels terrible when he's wearing the big ass red boots and like a Kanye West jacket. Like he's not optically, you can see where it's hard for a fan to be like, man, this guy's really feeling bad.
I remember what I told you this years ago when I applauded you. You were on the bench. Y'all were playing. I don't know if it was the playing game or whatever, but y'all were you were in New Orleans, and it was a bad game, and y'all were getting annihilated. And you were laying on the court, and you looked furious. Everyone stayed away from you. They knew how pissed off you were because, my God, it was a bad, bad game. The point is you cared. When we looked at Michael Irvin when he was playing on the football field, he was winning championships in Dallas, and at the tail end of his career, he was standing away from his teammates when Dallas was sticking up the joint, and he was at Veterans Stadium, and he literally had tears streaming down his face because he was so appalled at how bad they were. You understand? When you see people, when you see that athlete, and they care, and and you can identify with their passion to play, their passion to be successful, that matters. And when you see something different from that,
I will say, it's easy for me to sit here and say these things, but I can't even imagine to be 26 years old, to have $10 million, $20 million, $40 million, have thousands of people cheering me on, millions of people know who I am, see my jersey, do all that stuff. Like, I can certainly see where in that kind of headspace, taking a night off, like, who cares? Things are gravy. Things are awesome. Things are cool. I'm in Miami, or I'm in Los Angeles, or I'm in wherever. We got a charter jet here. I'm driving a Porsche or what. Like, things are cool. So I can understand why in today's day and age, players aren't as obsessed with the results and the game and the championships and the glory. Other stuff does matter, for sure. And a lot of these players have been playing, or probably all these players of all the sports have been playing this specific game for the better part of their entire life, maybe their entire life, from what they can remember. Whether it's AAU or travel teams or high school or college or junior college or whatever, like, I can definitely see where it's like, dude, it's Tuesday night, it's a basketball game in LA. Who cares? It's week 4 of the season. Who gives a shit? Like, who really cares? There's other stuff in life. And I think that is part of it too. A lot of these players have, and again, I'm not talking about just the NBA, but a lot of these players have other businesses. They have clothing lines, they have podcasts, they have, media stuff they have going on. They have lives, they have other stuff going on outside of just the game. Is that for better or for worse? I don't know. But it is changing. Like, the player is changing. The game itself is changing. It's not... to me, it would almost be kind of weird if, like... trying to think of a player. If... Kyrie Irving. If Kyrie Irving was like injured or something, and they're losing a game middle of the season, right around the All-Star break, if his team's losing a game and he's just crying his eyes out, it's like, dude, it's a basketball game. What's going on here? I think the glory of it, the pride or whatever, however you want to phrase it, that to me is just an older thing. That's that, like, you know, lunch pail to work, ring the bell mentality where you're just a company man, you're in there, you know, you're gritting and grinding, and now it's just kind of changed. So maybe we're just at that point. Maybe we're just at that point to where this is a cultural shift, a philosophy shift with the players. You know, maybe it's just everything coming together at the same time, and right now we're seeing it.
Notice it. So all of a sudden it becomes a storyline for the doggies of the world and various others who are lamenting the absence of availability some of these players appear to have, but more importantly, how laissez-faire, whatever the word is, to the comfort level that they have optically with missing those games.
Yes, I mean, Stephen A., neither one of them really talked about, I guess, solving the issue, but as much as like what it's doing to the fan, and it's hard to think of what you can do, because you can't punish a player for sitting out if they are legitimately injured or if they're legitimately tired or if whatever. You know, like if you're on a back-to-back, I could see where it's like, look, I'm dead, I'm tired, my legs are sore, you know, I have nothing in me. Then yeah, sit out for sure. You know, so you don't want to punish the player for doing that, and then you don't want to also make them just make up injuries. You don't want to hear like, oh, I've got a toe cramp or I've got a calf strain or whatever, and all of a sudden, because then you could just do that. What are you going to do? How are you going to you know, force players to play? But then simultaneously, you can't say like, okay, well, lineups have to be confirmed 24 hours before the game, because a lot of these tickets are being bought weeks ahead of time. A lot of these tickets are being bought, you know, for Christmas. They'll be bought for a game a month away, or, you know, like tickets and trips and hotels and all that stuff. They aren't purchased 24 hours, 48 hours in advance a majority of the time. So it's tough. That's why, to me, the easiest thing to do would be to reshape the schedule. Now, it would be hard to do that without cutting down games, because I've heard people say like no back-to-backs. Well, if you spaced out an extra day of rest between all the games and kept it at 82 or kept it at the current length of the season, the NBA season is going to take a year. You know, like all of a sudden, then you're taking a year to play the season. So you don't want to do that. So I don't know. I've also heard people say things like make the season into like quadrants or like quarters, to where, you know, the first quarter of the season you do kind of a standings thing, and you usher playoff seedings like that, like throughout the season. If you win the first quarter, you know, you're automatically in the playoffs. If you win the second quarter, you're automatically in. Whatever. You know, just ideas to make. And I'm not saying I support that, but just ideas to make the entire season matter, versus teams who are like, okay, we can kind of coast, and then at the end, once the All-Star game hits, then we got to put it into overdrive. You know, so I don't know the right answer. Let me know in the comments below what you think. What is the right answer? Is load management a problem in the NBA? How would you fix it? Give me some ideas. Are you angry as a fan? Do you think the players are selfish? Let me know in the comments below what you think. This is the dog days of summer, ladies and gentlemen. We are, you know, the NFL is obviously not playing. I do watch all sports. Again, season ticket holder of the Pelicans, so NBA is right in the wheelhouse. So we will be sprinkling in all kind of other videos on the channel. My expertise knows no bounds.